I found my old Coldplay wristband from the Mylo Xyloto tour back in 2012. You think they're still checking this hashtag on Twitter? I don't know. Tweet it to them. Tweet my review, actually. Tweet my ranked video with this hashtag to Coldplay and see if they find it, thanks to this old wristband that I just keep hanging on to for some reason. Hey everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for another episode of my series Ranked. Ranked is where I go through and obviously rank, as the title would imply, from worst to best a certain band or else artist, singles or albums. And I promise I'll eventually get to singles. It's just a lot of work, and right now I'm focusing on albums. And I have a lot of bands to get through. I've got several coming up in the next month or so. I must say I'm a little bit nervous about this one because I don't know how Coldplay fans feel. I feel like everybody's obviously different, but I don't know if there's like a hardcore consensus on how they're supposed to be ranked, but this is my personal ranking. It's not based off of commercial viability. It's not based off of how it affected and changed the band and helped them progress. It's my personal intake as I spent a lot of time going through their records, listening, and then in turn giving you an informed opinion. So let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And obviously, like I mentioned with Tad, the goal for this month is to unlock that Muse episode if we get to $500 in the end of August. So thank you. I think we're very close to the goal as of recording this video. So I do hope that we hit that so that I can do that video in September for you. Let's kick off the list with number 7.
Underneath the storm, an umbrella saying, sitting with the boys and takes away the pain. Up and up, up and up. Saying, we're gonna get it together right now. We're gonna get it together somehow.
Unlike some of these discographies I've been ranking lately, the bottom spot wasn't exactly an easy choice. It wasn't something so below what they've done in the past that it had to hit rock bottom. A Head Full of Dreams is a great alternative and pop record, full of jangly melodies and plenty of flair and dynamic that made the Brit rockers so interesting in the first place. I would be among those that argue that Coldplay have never released a poor album, whether it be in terms of lyrics or sound. A Head Full of Dreams is that sigh of relief that you breathe after going through a tough time in your life, because you look up and you see that the world did not come crashing down around you. Instead, Chris Martin and the guys push the walls back up, so to speak, and carve out a melodic and insightful record that has more hits than it does misses. I mean, I hate the hidden track X marks the spot after Army of One as much as the next person, but I really think that Coldplay caught too much flack for this album as a whole. Hell, they even pulled off an Obama sample on the Kaleidoscope interlude gracefully and tied it all together with a smile. The drums are peppy, the tunes are sweet, and if nothing else, it was a well-intended project that made me smile knowing that one of my favorite bands is aging gracefully.
It just seems that upstream I keep rolling. Still got such a long way to go.
Whereas many would rank this much closer to the top, I have a bit more of a mixed opinion on Mylo Xyloto. It's an immersing listen that glistens with sharper and more sleek production than their past works, yet it still feels like home in the sense that you know the strong sense of chemistry of Coldplay is still hard at work. I love a good majority of this record, but there are a few songs that just feel a bit off? Maybe it's the contrast between the dancier rhythmic tunes and the spiraling but heartfelt down-tempo moments. For example, one day I might be in the mood to reflect with the crooning Up in Flames, or the hopeful Us Against the World. Another day, I could be ready to dance with the exuberant, life-filled Charlie Brown and the guitar splendor of Hurts Like Heaven. I can't fault really any of the songs for being blatantly bad, I just personally feel it's a bit two-faced in what it wants to be as an album, and as a result of that, I feel a bit of the magic is lost throughout these 14 songs. And Princess of China with Rihanna, it's okay, I guess. A lot of fans found it very confusing, and I've definitely turned a corner on how I feel about it personally. Even if I'm not a huge fan of that one, I will say that some of my top favorite Coldplay songs actually come on Mylo though. Paradise is simply beautiful, Charlie Brown and Every Teardrop make me smile on the darkest of days, while UFO gives out a message of perseverance.
I see your colors in the dark. I thirst, all I know is that I love you so much it hurts.
A certain rift between the head and the heart is prevalent all throughout Ghost Stories, a chilling listen that never fails to bring both smiles and tears as you listen through. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you're constantly going back and forth between reassuring yourself that everything will be fine and then falling back into a pit of gloom? Yeah, that's what I feel this album brings to the table. It's not afraid to hold back with its honesty. Don't let the gleeful tinkering of ink fool you, as even some of the bright spots almost seem like a call for help. If you initially skipped this album, or never looked into the meaning behind it perhaps, it's a breakup album inspired by Chris Martin's conscious uncoupling with now ex-wife Gwyneth Paltrow. The instrumentation is often sparse and minimalist, instead relying on the emotive power of the lyrics to build these songs. Even though some do carry the hopeful tune with a sad story, some can just flat out tear you down as a listener as you're pulled into Chris Martin's world. The best example of this is the emotional wrecking ball Midnight, which was produced by John Hopkins and initially hated by yours truly. What the fuck, Coldplay? Auto-tune and a weird electronic ending? Context matters, people, and in the context of Ghost Stories, Midnight kills on every level. Even though Midnight was the first taste that we got, Magic was the actual lead single, charming its way into fans' hearts with a nod-along-worthy bass line and crisp production that made it feel joyful as Martin described the feeling of love that he still feels for his former partner after all this time. To fully appreciate this as a whole, you need to be in the right mindset. It's a mood album that's not going to click every single time you listen to it, or in every setting. I only hope that it can hit you one day the way that it has hit me.
The spies hide out in every corner, but you can't touch them, no, 'cause they're all spies.
The Radiohead comparisons that came with Parachutes were inevitable. The key is to not let that influence define your perception of the album, because it's definitely more than that. Fresh off of a handful of EPs, the time came for Coldplay to ready their debut full-length. Coming in at only 10 songs plus a hidden bonus track in roughly 40 minutes, the band knew not to overstay their welcome as they honed their sound. Acoustic-drenched melodies and driving pianos command Parachutes. It's the signature sound that so many beg for still to this day, along with the sound of that of their sophomore release. My first exposure to the songs from this record surprisingly did not come in the form of Staple Yellow, but instead Don't Panic, thanks to an episode of the amazing show Rescue Me in the mid-2000s. It added so much to the closing of that pilot episode that I had to hear more, and ended up downloading the entire album. The reverb-laden Spies still gets me with its atmospheric guitar, while Trouble guts you with its confessional theme and a melody you'll never forget. Bass lines have almost always been a feature that I look for in Coldplay's music, and Guy Berryman didn't hold back on the debut. One of my favorites is the looming line on closer, Everything's Not Lost, which adds a lot of rich texture up against the warm guitar and elevator-style drums. Parachutes is the result of a budding band that would go on to conquer the world, and I couldn't think of a better starting line for them than this.
I've gotta say I'm on my way down. God give me style and give me grace. God put a smile upon my face.
I know, blasphemy. This isn't my number one pick, but just a reminder, these are all based on my personal preferences and not commercial success or fan popularity, etc. This is a fantastic record, but it's also a mood album that's not always accessible. They trailblazed the piano rock revolution on radio a bit with some of the singles such as the classic Clocks, and I really admire what they did here, and I stand by my perfect score rating that I gave of this album a few years ago whenever I did a proper full-length review. That just goes to show you how much faith I have in my next few picks. A Rush of Blood wasn't doing away with Parachutes, it was an extension that paved the way for what they would go on to accomplish with their next two albums. Martin's vocals and thoughtful lyrics on politics mark one of the most blissful listens of their discography, but one can't go without admiring cuts like Green Eyes and the graceful Warning Sign either. The album does wonders for the listener, just go in with the right mindset and you'll be hooked. The howl of a fall wind reminds me of X and Y. It's a shifting of the seasons album, the moving tide for a band swept up in popularity. They didn't lose a bit of themselves in the process though, striking with even more fiercely played guitars on Low and the perfect opener Square One. The pianos still play a big part of what Coldplay were trying to accomplish here, but they didn't rely on the simplicity quite as much, adding in an array of other instruments including synthesizers for a more layered approach to the music. I had a few friends that were older than me that I really respected suggest the band and this particular album to me. Shout out to Ben, I know you're one of those and I'm sure you're watching this video. Thanks for helping me get into Coldplay. And ever since I loved the single speed of sound, I gave the album a chance. What I heard went beyond the talent of what I'd previously seen on some of their popular hits. It had exactly what I needed at an integral point in my life. The lyrics vent frustration with life, worries, and relationships, playing out over big bass lines and loud drums, while sometimes contained to a higher vocal octave and a ballad tempo to keep things diverse. X and Y might not be perfect, but it's a really addicting experience if you tilt your head a bit to the side, shake off some of those preconceived notions of what Coldplay are supposed to be, and then just sit back and listen. But then again, for some, that's the hardest part.
Just wait until the shine wears off.
Between phases of Coldplay came a renaissance of splendid music. They were past the alternative and piano pop labels, dipping their feet into the bigger, poppier, and more grandiose waters. I think I was a very late bloomer whenever it came to this record Viva La Vida, but I'm not afraid to tell you how quickly this album consumes you. 1 second, it's lifting you to the sky, like with the instrumental opener Life in Technicolor. The next thing you know, you're dropped into the moody atmosphere of acoustic guitars and heavy bass on Cemeteries of London. It's a beautiful thing, and it continues as the record rolls along. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this one because I just recently reviewed it. I highly recommend checking out that video, but I love this album to death. As you can see, it's my absolute favorite for Coldplay, and it's able to shift moods so seamlessly, tackling politics, relationships, and then just an atmosphere. Violet Hill, one of my all-time favorite Coldplay songs. This album kills it on every single level, and I really wish that they would make an album that maybe channeled a bit of this someday. We've reached the end of the list. That's it for this episode of Rank. Thanks for hitting the like button, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know your personal list in the comments section down below. Several episodes of Ranked are cooking up in the next month or two. These are very time consuming, so if you are able to support on TAD or else Patreon, that's awesome and it truly helps out. It helps me keep pushing forward with videos like this. You can go directly to my Patreon by tapping right over here in the corner or click right here for another Coldplay themed video. You can tap right over here to see a recent review, and other than that, I can see you very soon right here on ARTV for a lot more videos. I have a lot cooking up in the next few weeks. Find me on social media in the meantime.